It's Comrade Bernie versus Comrade Warren in the Democratic primary. There's a debate tonight. We'll talk about how that's going to play out. Is Bernie the front runner, and can Warren actually just cancel student loans if she were to win this whole thing? Plus, Iranian journalists quit over lying to their countrymen. Trump's trying to build the wall. Mass extinction threatened by the media, and Jessica Biel's anti-vax. That's coming up. Welcome to the Buck Sexton Show, everybody. Man, we have a debate coming up tonight that I feel like about 5 of you listening are probably going to watch. There's only about 15 people across the country really seem to care. I'm just kidding. Democrats, of course, care. They'll be watching this thing. And there's one storyline that's getting the attention. Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. They had been very chummy with each other. They had been very friendly with each other in this contest to see who will be the Democrat winner of the primary until now. And that's because, the Iowa caucuses are just a few weeks away. And this field of Democrats is going to get winnowed down very quickly. You're going to have a fight over who is the most progressive candidate that plays out, who is the true heir to the Democrat socialist throne in this country. Is it Elizabeth Warren or is it Bernie Sanders? And that's how you have a particularly nasty little fight going on right now between these two. The basics of it are that there's a story that was run in a bunch of different news outlets. CNN picked it up and others, that Elizabeth Warren claims that Bernie Sanders told her in 2018 that a woman couldn't win the presidency, which of course is in a field where wokeness is your currency, where being the most woke candidate is considered among the very most important things. Sure enough, we find out that Bernie may have a wokeness issue. Never mind for a moment that the Oscars will have, it seems, a greater diversity on stage of directors who will win nominations than there will be diversity of the Democrat candidates who are at the top of the field in this primary. In fact, you'd have to think long and hard who is still in it that would even qualify under the Democrat definition of diversity. Buttigieg is a member of the LGBTQ community. Okay. Who else is still in the mix? Who else is still in this race? Elizabeth Warren, as we know, is a fake minority, but I don't think that's something they're going to be touting all that much as diversity for this Democrat field. But I had to laugh because, Warren is upset because of what Bernie campaign people had been going around and saying about her. She's upset because she says that there were unfair attacks leveled against. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't really know. I will say this: it's fun to watch Democrats fight in this way. It is entertaining. There is no question about that. But this non-aggression pact that had been in existence between Bernie and Warren has gone away. It'll be the single most interesting thing to play out tonight. I wonder if, and I don't even know who's moderating. Producer Mark, do we know who's moderating the debate tonight? Which left-wing network that pretends to be
CNN? Mr. Blitzer will be
CNN, my favorite. CNN is, I don't know what they're going to do here, because CNN was completely, and I was there, I was in the building, I was hearing all the discussions, talking to producers. They were completely in the tank for Hillary Clinton. There's no question about that. They were absolutely, positively doing everything they could to make sure that Hillary Clinton was going to be the Democrat nominee, and then of course the president beyond that. And so it's not really a Bernie building. It's not really a place that you could look to and say there's a lot of fondness for the outright socialism of Bernie Sanders as opposed to the soft and incremental socialism of, say, Hillary Clinton. Do they feel now at CNN like they have amends to make for this? That their unwillingness to go forth and give a fair shot to Bernie Sanders, to Comrade Sanders, the Democrat socialist from the state of Vermont, maybe now they make amends? I think the answer is no. Warren is just culturally more in line with the Democrat elites. They look at her, she's a Harvard professor. Yeah, Bernie Sanders has been a senator for God knows how long. But they look at Warren, and she seems to the libs to be a bit more sophisticated, perhaps. She just appears that way. She comes across that way. There's a little bit less of a character. And journalists who spend a lot of time thinking about how they look and how they sound and how they are perceived, this really matters to them. So I think that there's still going to be a bit of favoritism against Sanders in favor of Warren certainly from within the CNN building, and tonight in the debate, we'll have to see how it plays out. I don't know if I'm going to watch it tonight. I have a life too, you know. I don't know how much. Maybe I'll assign producer Mark to watch this one for us and take notes. That'll be because he loves that. After he finishes his third job, by the way, where he's been working for 15 straight hours. Producer Mark, aren't there like wage laws that are being violated here by having you work like 4 days straight at a time? Isn't this an issue?
I plead the fifth.
Okay. I'm just making sure, heaven forbid the, New York Labor Relations Board finds out that this guy hasn't been able to get more than an hour of sleep in like a month, whatever. You were on vacation for a bit, though, so I can't feel that.
I only worked a week in December.
Yeah. So
these are all things our bosses should
but
not be hearing.
He'll cross the 100 hours threshold in a week, no problem. So anyway, I need my nap time. But here's what I want to say about tonight's debate. I think that there will be not a lot that's memorable because we already know what these Democrats are going to say. They're just going to fight it out now. The factionalism of the Democrats is going to come to the forefront. You're going to see people who have been playing nice with each other all of a sudden, when there's the realistic possibility of knocking somebody off, when you can vote somebody off the island, when only certain people are getting a rose, can neither confirm nor deny that I watched The Bachelor for the first time ever recently. I just was curious. It's a cultural phenomenon. And I thought I needed to watch it because, hashtag culture. But the war between Comrade Warren and Comrade Sanders tonight will be the single most interesting thing, assuming that it actually breaks out. Warren's campaign, there were initially questions about whether Bernie really had said he didn't think a woman could win, which, I guess for Democrats, this is, this is a horrible thing to say. How could he say something so horrible? I don't know. I'm not sure that Republicans would really get as upset about somebody expressing an opinion. It's not an opinion that people generally want to hear, but it could be true. It could be true that it's more difficult for a person from a certain demographic, a certain group, to win the presidency based on polls, based on data. You can look at this, right? Is an atheist likely to win the presidency? People might want to believe that shouldn't matter, or maybe believe it matters a whole lot, but there's certainly data that would back that up one way or the other. Is it harder for a woman to win the presidency? I would think no, but I'd have to look at the most recent data and see. And even then, there's what people will tell pollsters, and there's what the reality is. But, adults could have this kind of conversation, but Democrats are not adults. Democrats like to fling things at each other and get into fights and decide who the most woke is, which has really just become it's an excellent shorthand for the social justice obsession and the political correctness obsession that has completely overtaken the American left and the Democratic Party. But I thought this was great. There is a technique and there are a couple of ways to say it, so you don't have to, but the one that I like, I believe it's called preteritio, where you say, I'm not going to point out, I'm not going to sit here and say that my opponent hasn't read a book in 10 years, because that wouldn't be a nice thing, right? That's preteritio, the pretense that you're not going to say something that you are saying, the underhanded way of attacking somebody. Bernie Sanders apparently said this to Elizabeth Warren, and here's the back and forth between Comrade Sanders and Comrade Warren. Or rather, here is how Comrade Warren says this actually went down. This is a statement that she put out because she loves Bernie so much. Quote, Bernie and I met for more than 2 hours in December 2018 to discuss the 2020 election, our past working together on our shared goals, beating Donald Trump, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Among the topics that came up was what would happen if Democrats nominated a female candidate. I thought a woman could win. He disagreed. I have no interest in discussing this private meeting any further because Bernie and I have far more in common than our differences on punditry. I'm in this race to talk about what's broken in this country and how to fix it, blah, 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 blah. I have no interest in further elaborating on this meeting now that I've elaborated on the single most incendiary charge. I'm not even sure this qualifies as preteritio, but it feels kind of close. It's like she said it and then she's pretending like she hasn't said it. Or she's saying, I don't want to elaborate, but I've already elaborated in the way that is going to do the maximum political damage to my opponent. Don't mess with Warren, man. You come at the Elizabeth Warren, you best not miss, Bernie. So we'll see. How much of a difference is there really between them? I would wonder if you could actually set up Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders supporters, and we will get into some of Bernie's supporters in a moment. I wonder if you set them up side by side and ask them to identify differences on policy between these two, how many could actually tell you in any significant way what their differences are. I would guess the answer, and I would love to run this experiment, although I don't think a lot of Bernie and Warren supporters will talk to me. I would love to run this experiment because I would guess the number is very, very small. In fact, I think if you asked most political pundits what is the difference really as a matter of policy between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, what you would hear is, well, Warren's like a little more wonky or something, a little more academic. They'd have some very vague, generalized way of separating out these two candidates. Here's the single most important takeaway, my friends. You have right now a Democratic Party in which there are really only two options. The old school Democrat head fake Clinton Biden apparatus where they, pretend to be centrists and technocrats when really they're just corrupt, self-dealing, go whichever way the wind blows, appease the left-wing mob, leftists. Right? I mean, that's you've got that option, the politics as usual of the Democratic Party, or you have the movement far into socialism that Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and even Pete Buttigieg represent. This is the modern Democratic Party. It has now transitioned into a ready-to-go, turnkey socialist party. It's just a question of how the chips fall in the next few months. That's where we are, and that's what you should remember as we see these squabbles playing out about how everyone cares so much about the middle class and the rich are just the bad people. Here's the thing about revolutionaries. When they come from the left, there's a pretty standard template. They create a lot of anger at what they view as the ruling class, the excesses of that ruling class, the elites, the rich, the aristocrats, the oligarchy, to borrow from Bernie Sanders. It's one of his favorite words. And the way you really know it's Bernie Sanders because the oligarchs are doing what they do. I do think my Bernie Sanders sounds a bit too much like Yogi Bear, but it's close enough. It's close enough that you certainly know that's Bernie Sanders. I did watch a lot of that cartoon back in the day. But revolutionaries come in promising that they will get rid of this oppression and that they will give nothing but benefits, sweetness, honey, and light to those who are part of the oppressed classes. The working class. In this country, we act like the middle class is an oppressed class, which I think is, if you were to look at that on historic or global standards, is flatly and obviously ridiculous. But nonetheless, it seems to work for some of these politicians. But you have to also remember that there's always an element when you're talking about people like Bernie Sanders who are calling for political revolution. There's an element of extremism that can become infused into what they're really, into the real ethos of the movement. There can be true believers who hide their real intentions and hide their real feelings about what's going on in the country in order to get enough support that they can then ram their plans down the throats of everybody else in the country. Right? So this is what I meant before a little bit about the head fake from the old Democrat Party. I mean, the old Democrats, meaning the Clinton, Biden, Schumer, Pelosi squad, that group tries to present themselves as just a more caring version of the generally capitalist, free market, and constitutionally minded Republican Party, right? Just a better, more caring about the oppressed, more caring about the poor, and better at governance. Although, as we see from California to New York to every other major blue enclave, it's the policies that Democrats fight with Republicans on that are so clearly the worst policies. It's the ones that we look at and we say, hold on a second, why wouldn't you arrest people for shoplifting, for example, which we'll talk about later? Democrats view that as a tool of oppression. If there are any racial disparities in arrest rates in a city, that's clearly evidence of racism. I mean, the areas where you have arguments between left and right in how to govern a city or how to govern a state, this is where we tend to say, okay, look at how it works when we do it our way. Look at how it works when you do it your way. But that's the old approach of the Democrats. Now you have Bernie Sanders. You have this revolutionary, I was going to say revolutionary guard, but that's giving everyone a bit of an Iran tingle, I think. Revolutionary group inside the Democratic Party that just wants to be more open and honest about this. And you have to think, who are really the supporters of this group? Who are the people that are going to be influencing the thought processes of those in power? What is the Bernie base really like? Well, I can tell you, as someone that operates in the realm of media commentary on a regular basis, Bernie bros, I mean the Bernie true believers, are among the worst people you will come across on the internet or anywhere else. They are horrifically nasty, often threatening, just incredibly, fiercely, insanely defensive of Bernie Sanders. Now, I understand that they would turn around and say, well, we'll look at Trump supporters. But, of course, I like Trump supporters, so I don't, and I understand that I come at this from a certain perspective. And I know plenty of Trump supporters who are super nice. Every Bernie Sanders supporter that I deal with or that I come across is either spewing just complete and utter nonsense about how socialism is going to be this cure-all for all the inequality in society, or they're rabid partisans who are really kind of scary. It's not so much that they want to fix the problems in this country. They want payback against those who have made the problems in this country. And that includes Trump supporters. That includes those who have done well, people who are self-made, who have become well-off, who are as Bernie Sanders calls it, the millionaires and the billionaires. Those people need to be punished. It's not just that they need to be, their so-called greed needs to be constrained, and government regulation needs to relieve them of their wealth. They need to be punished. They might even need to be ideologically cleansed. They need to be re-educated in some way. I'll take you to this Project Veritas situation in a second. Looks like James O'Keefe has done it again. Oops, he did it again. He played with the libs. Got lost in the... I don't know, how does the rest of it... You were younger than... Oh, you actually were too young for Britney Spears. You don't even remember.
Of course I know Britney Spears.
No, but like you were like an amoeba when Britney Spears was actually breaking onto the scene.
What was she, like 98 to like
yeah.
03?
When I was in high school, Britney Spears was it, man.
Yeah. So shouldn't you be able to know it's oops, I did it again. I played with my heart and I lost it again.
I lost it again. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Not singing it. I'm not you.
But. Right. Of course, you would not do that. But yes, indeed, there's a new Project Veritas video that is circulating. It's making the rounds. The truth about 2020. What we should have, James has done. Here we go. Oh, sorry. Expose 2020.com from James O'Keefe. And this is going to be particularly interesting to people because there's a real Bernie Sanders moment right now. I mean, the Democratic Party is in the process, as I sit here talking to you, of deciding whether or not they are a socialist party. They can call themselves other things. It doesn't matter. They will be a party for socialism. Elizabeth Warren is running around talking about how it's just a matter of executive decision she would forgive student loans. I mean, this is just the president. At that point, the president of the United States could just walk around with a blank checkbook and say, hey, I like you. Here's $1 billion from the Treasury because I like your smile, kid. Good luck. This is absurd. But that's what she's. We'll get into that a bit more later on. But the choice of whether or not we go down this road to socialism, which, if you want to borrow from Hayek, is also a road to serfdom for all of us in a sense. It's a road to government control, to bureaucrats having a much greater say over your life, over your day-to-day affairs than they ever should. This will have ramifications that could stretch for who knows how long in this country, but also around the world, too. Other places have looked at us, have mirrored our economic approach, have seen how much wealth and prosperity has been created by the American people, for the American people, and say, maybe we should get in on that. We've run this experiment many times. Do you want to be South Korea or do you want to be Venezuela? Do you want to be Hong Kong? Do you want to be Singapore or do you want to be North Korea? Free market, individual ingenuity rewarded, rule of law, private property, freedom, liberty, things that are good, that we like. Do you want those things or do you want people that think they know better than you making the determinations for you about what you should do, what you should have, and how and where you should be able to spend your time and your money? These are very important questions for society. These are not little differences. This is not a Coke versus Pepsi. And people always tell me I was never able to tell the difference. So maybe I have a weak palate or something. It's always been the same to me. But this is not a Coke versus Pepsi decision in this election at all. This is a socialism versus freedom decision. And you have people that understand also what the real difference in trajectory would be. People are beginning to see this, I think, because you have true believers on the Bernie Sanders side who are running around and letting everyone know they're going off script, because Bernie Sanders is supposed to be like the cuddly, socialist who just eats Ben and Jerry's, lives up in Vermont, hangs out, just wants to give you free health care, man. Remember this, what socialists don't tell you is all the amazing goodies that they're promising. Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Buttigieg, all of them. What they won't tell you is that all comes through government coercion. That if you don't want to do these things, you have no choice. If you don't want the government deciding what doctor you can see, when you can see that doctor. If you don't want the government telling you how much of your money you can keep, how much money is going to go to other people. That should be yours. That is the result of, remember, people make money often based on their time. Not necessarily because they're all hourly employees, although that's certainly a part of it too, but you put your time into an endeavor and then you're rewarded for that. So when they're taking money from you, they are taking hours, they are taking time from your life and giving it to other people. There is a rot at the center of this redistributive approach to governance. And it needs to be identified now. We should all be very, very clear on this. The Bernie bros, who, as I said, are, and even Democrats will often complain about them for being, first of all, these people are delusional. Bernie Sanders? Does anyone really think Bernie Sanders knows how to run anything? Does anyone think Bernie Sanders would be good at running a business? That Bernie Sanders understands what really hard work is? Why? Because he has been representing an almost, a state that is a Democrat state with very little diversity, where he just gets to run around and promising, the sun, the moon, and the stars to everybody, gives speeches, goes to the Senate. What legislation has he authored? What has he done that's important? The guy was an independent, caucusing with Democrats for how long? He wants to lecture you all on hard work. I love this. Ricky Gervais, who had his phenomenal, and we led the show with it, a week ago, had his phenomenal opening speech at the Golden Globes because it was funny and it was true. And watching the hangers-on, the toadies of the entertainment media try to do what they could to protect the delicate feelings of people who are really lucky. If you're sitting in that audience at the Golden Globes and you're somebody who's either being honored or just invited to this thing, and you work in the entertainment industry, you're really lucky. And you should be thankful and grateful and humbled by your good fortune instead of thinking that it confers some extra special intelligence upon you as an actor or an actress to tell everyone else how to live their lives. Ricky Gervais is like, look, I used to be poor and it was terrible, and now because of a lot of people that like what I do, I've become very, very rich, and my life is super comfortable and easy now, and I know that, so I don't tell other people what to do, I don't lecture them, and I don't hector them, because I know it's tough for them. It's not tough for me. Thank you to those people for not making it tough for me anymore, right? This is what we all instinctually know is true. This is something that we all recognize as being the reality of having been in the struggle and having been in a better place financially and economically. And so Bernie Sanders going around always talking about the middle class. And, Bernie Sanders has been had great health care and paid for by the taxpayer. I mean, the federal government, the Senate has incredible health care and has been living on a really nice salary and doesn't really have to, sweat it that much, folks. It hasn't been that bad for Bernie. But he wants to tell you all that. And by the way, he's got 3 houses. I mean, this is the other part. He's a socialist with 3 houses. Why does he need 3 houses? He asks billionaires why they need billions. Why does Bernie Sanders need 3? Really only needs 1 house, right? If you're going to take the socialists at their word, if you're going to believe the rhetoric, why does he get away then with living large and in charge? I just would want someone. Why is Elizabeth Warren worth, I think they estimate $6 to $12 million, her and her husband. That's a lot of money. It's a lot more money than I have. I would like to get to $1 million. Producer Mark and I both have the same goal. We would like to get to $1 million. That sounds like fun. But Elizabeth Warren is also going around playing the, I care so much about the middle class and the struggle that people are in and everything else. She's had more of a she's had a more interesting resume building experience than Bernie Sanders, of course, helped in no small part by being a fake Native American. But they're playing this game of trying to present themselves as caring so much. Meanwhile, to bring us back to Project Veritas and James O'Keefe and the Bernie Bros, this is expose2020.com, James O'Keefe's project at Project Veritas. This is a Bernie organizer who's talking about how he feels about what's going on here. And I think we've got it all bleeped and whatnot, but be prepared for that. Play it. 16.
So if Trump gets reelected, what?
Cities burn.
Do you even think that some of these, MAGA people could even be re-educated?
I mean, we gotta try. I mean, in Nazi Germany, after the fall of the Nazi Party, there was a ton of the populace that was Nazified. I mean, Germany had to spend billions of dollars re-educating people to not be Nazis. We're probably going to have to do the same thing here. And that's kind of what Bernie's hey, free education for everybody, because we're going to have to teach you not to be a Nazi.
Now, they're going to say what they always will in this circumstance, which is that this Bernie Sanders field organizer is not representative of broader sentiment among Bernie supporters. But let's ask ourselves the question, is that really the case? Do you think that there are a lot of Bernie supporters, people that want Bernie Sanders to be the president of the United States, who believe the things that Bernie Sanders himself says about Donald Trump? That Donald Trump is a massive national security threat, that he's an authoritarian, that he's a traitor, that he's a Russian stooge, that he's a Russian asset. I think a lot of them do believe that. And this is where I start to sound a little bit more ominous, perhaps, than I usually do, but I'm willing to take crazy people at their word. I think that true believers should be listened to. When they're telling you what they really think, you should say, hold on a second. Maybe it's worth taking some notes here. They have been claiming for years that Donald Trump was a threat to the most sacred institutions of our republic. And this isn't, I don't think anyone would deny that has been going on. They'll say Donald Trump is a white nationalist. They'll say that he is a racist. They'll say that he is a national security threat, that he could have war break out with North Korea or with Iran at any moment. They say all of these things. And let's not forget, and I don't want to unfairly paint the entire Bernie supporter, because I have some friends who are Bernie supporters, actually, and I like them. There are very nice people who support Bernie Sanders. I'm not a crazy person, but there's also this faction within Bernie bro world that is nuts. And they're some of the most ardent Bernie believers. And it should not just pass unnoticed or unmentioned that, while we had the media lecturing us all the time about Trump, saying throw that bum out of here or whatever at the different rallies he's had, and how Trump was inspiring violence. I heard that. I remember that story so many times during the general election in 2016 at CNN. I was on TV having to talk about this. I was like, guys, he uses tough talk. He's not actually inspiring violence. It was a Bernie Sanders supporter, very clearly, openly, avowedly, who, for reasons of health care defense, tried a mass assassination of specifically conservative members of Congress, notably wounding and almost killing Steve Scalise, trying to kill Senator Rand Paul, among many others, at that baseball field in Alexandria, Virginia. It was an attempted mass assassination of members of Congress from a Bernie Sanders supporter. Now, I'm not saying that Bernie Sanders supporters are all like this. Of course, that's stupid, and that's a straw man argument. But there are people who are Bernie supporters in positions of actual influence who really do think that Trump supporters perhaps need re-education of some kind, who really think that they're all just stealth white nationalists, a danger to this country in ways that we have to deal with. I mean, I can promise you, and I generally also have an issue with the hidden camera stuff when it's low-level people who are blowing off some steam who work at CNN. I don't. When James O'Keefe, hits a home run, I'm the first to say, great work, James. I think some of the stuff, for example, at CNN, if someone asked me about any company that I'd worked for after hours, I think that I'm having a drink with a peer and I start mouthing off about things there. I think I question the wisdom of airing that stuff as a journalist. Because they can always just deny that and say, oh, well, that's someone, the higher up say that's just some disgruntled employee who doesn't know anything, doesn't mean anything. If you get someone high up enough the food chain, I think that matters. In this case, though, if you've been exposed to Bernie bros, you know that there are a lot of them who really think that when Bernie Sanders talks about a political revolution in this country, he means it. And that there will not be any sit down and compromise and halfway with, say, Trump supporters. There will not be any effort to try to reach some consensus position about what will be good governance benefiting the most people, or good governance rooted in principle, which is going to be an even trickier thing. It's one thing to try and be in a position to negotiate with your political opponents and find a little what you like and a little what they like. It's a whole other one when you're saying, no, it's just about what's right, and try to convince them of that. In the realm of individual rights, collectivists are always going to give you tremendous pushback, and they will reject arguments that are rooted in individual rights, individual private property, and they'll always come at you with the collective good. So Bernie Sanders should not be underestimated as a political force, not just in terms of his ability to win the Democratic nomination, which I think must be taken seriously. If he is able to knock Elizabeth Warren out of serious contention and all of a sudden the pressure rises on Warren to get out, Bernie Sanders picks up Warren supporters. He's the front runner, folks. This guy's the front runner for the Democrats. Someone that I really mean this. I would not trust Bernie Sanders to run my 10-year-old neighbor's lemonade stand. I mean, this is not someone you want in charge of anything. But if you point that out, the Bernie bros are going to come for you. And as you can hear from Mr. We're going to put the Trump people in re-education camps, Bernie bros are crazy. I got something for you guys. It looks like Cardi B is learning the value of limited taxation. Producer Mark, would you please? This is Cardi B on taxes.
So, the government is taking 40% of my taxes. And Uncle Sam, I want to know what you're doing with my tax money. Because you know what I'm saying? Like, when you donate to a kid from a foreign country, they give you updates of what they're doing with your donation. I want to know what you're doing with my tax money, because I'm from New York and the streets is always dirty. We was voted the dirtiest city in America.
I mean, she's wrong about New York as the dirtiest city in America, but she is right that it would be nice to have a better sense of where all of our tax money is going. So And it also does kind of hurt. You get 40% of your money getting taken away by the federal government, close to it. I think the top tax rate's 37% now on federal income. It was 39 if memory serves. But Cardi B all of a sudden is like, I want to keep my money. What is the government doing with all my money? Now, she's not an astute political observer, but I do like when people learn the lessons of real life. Guess what? If Bernie Sanders wins the presidency, Cardi, he's going to take a lot more of your money than 40%. Try more like 60, maybe 70. That's what you're going to be paying as a top rate if Bernie Sanders gets his way and Congress goes along with it. Or maybe they just go executive order route. Something else we've got to look at.